Hello and welcome to DMT Journal. This is your host Sean, and today I have yet another compelling story for you all. So today's story, like all of the other stories that I will tell and that I told already, is based on true events that I experienced. So today's story is based on the time that I died at 6 years old and met Jesus Christ. Now, in order to tell this story accurately, I have to merge somebody else's experiences with mine because the correlation is genuinely gonna frighten, if not surprise you. But before we get into the story, please hit that like button. Feel free to comment, subscribe, and share the stream. And also take into the account that I do not condone or promote the use of drugs or mind-altering practices, as this is just for educational purposes only. So in my previous video, I talked a lot about the natural DMT experiences that I would have. This one was similar to that, except it had a lot of order, and therefore I was ultimately not able to call it a DMT experience. Now, it definitely felt more real than reality, but visually there were some times where there appeared to be lots of detail in what I was witnessing, and then on the other side of things, there seemed to be settings that lacked detail, almost as if they were on a lower level of vibration or experience than what we naturally experience here on Earth. Now, lately I've been telling this story a lot. It's probably the most important experience to me, and I've thought about it so much in my head that the weird part is every single time I recall this memory, it's as if I'm reliving it. It was that vivid. It was that descriptive. It felt that official to who I am and what my purpose was here. So, for proper reference, somebody is going to make a cameo in this story that I talked about from my very first video. The mother of my child, which I named Kingsley. We call him King. And we're not currently together. We haven't been together for a few years now. And mainly it's because we had disagreements that were too strong. Those type relationships are very, very difficult. They're not necessarily that of what you hear with the soulmate, but they do equivalent a lot with the stories or the concept of having a twin flame. And that is something I pondered about deeply. And when we were together, it's something I actually brought to her attention because, again, I don't know if I really covered this in the first video, but as I was spiritually sensitive, she was also sensitive because she was able to see entities. She just didn't understand the things that I understood about what I was experiencing. But even to this day, I'm sure it's the same thing going on. Let her tell it. It's been going on her entire life. She has a sensitivity to the other side. She sees entities. And she also had profound experiences, some of them in which I was able to witness, others I was directly a part of, meaning I was right there when it happened. And usually there was some kind of synchronization to where I either saw or felt exactly what she was talking about. Now, as I covered in the first video, I hypothesized that she actually is some form of an angel or something or someone who I'm deliberately attached to. One of three, and I also believe she's that third source or that third string of energy, if you will, that separated from me after being one with me to deliberately experience here. And I've met her obviously in real life as well as meeting the other two. Now with that background information in your head, I'm hoping you're able to kind of think about or ponder or even come to a conclusion on what you think is actually transpiring here. Because I thought of everything. I thought of soulmates, twin flames, angels, obviously, even lesser known or lesser praised forms of entities to explain exactly what I was going through. So I'm going to tell this story from the setting of explaining it to her, because her input or the way she elaborated on it was very, very profound, and it actually helped me conclude a lot what was going on with my own experience. It filled those voids. So the time that we spent together, I'm not sure honestly if we made 2 years. I know my son was born on February 2nd, 2022. You know, that's 2/2/22. And shortly after, we kind of mutually agreed that whatever we had going on at that time wasn't working. There was lots of stress. There was lots of disagreements. There was lots of arguing. And it wasn't the typical arguing that you hear, just small disagreements that led to strong personalities clashing. And after a while, it just got irritating. But whenever I reflect on these experiences we shared together in present time, I don't really think about the bad moments or experiences. Oh, sure. In the back of my mind, I know they definitely there. They definitely were there. But I also don't really pay attention to the romantic times and the fun we had. And I'm not saying that I'm deliberately tuning those things out, because those are my memories, and memories are sacred for this exact reason. I'm here sharing this information with you all, and I'm helping create an understanding to myself with it. But what seems to come to mind first are these spiritual conversations we had, these spiritual things to however a specific day went, and both of us just conversing with one another about our types of experiences, and the synchronization moments, very, very. For instance, if you don't know what I'm talking about, there were times where in my mind, I was thinking of her. You know what I'm saying? You're in a relationship, you get used to patterns, you're in love, whatever the case may be. I used to think of her, and that's when she'd text me. She'd be somewhere, I'd be somewhere completely different, or something on a more simpler side. We simply say the same thing at the same time, or we both wake up to hearing chatter in our head, as if on a higher level of experience, we were talking to each other. And we would look at each other as we're waking up and both be thinking the same thing. Did you say something? No, I didn't say anything. Did you say something? We definitely heard something. You get what I'm saying? The most evident, though, is pretty clear. If she was having a good day, I had a good day. If she was having a bad day, I had a bad day. It doesn't matter. And I know there's things like empathy, but this felt a bit more direct, as if I was deliberately tagged to her emotions. And it was to the point where I'd constantly check on her, make sure she was okay, because sometimes I would feel bad out of nowhere, and I wouldn't be able to understand it. And it came to the point where these were happening so much that I actually used to tell her, you know, when she would be frustrated at something, I'm like, calm down, because I don't want to feel bad. Like, and she knew exactly what I meant on a spiritual level, not because I'm being an empath and I hate to see somebody suffering, but because I would have felt it directly. So all of this is important to this experience. So enough stalling, let's get to it. So I tell her in one of hundreds of these type conversations that we had, right? I tell her, like, one time I died and I met Jesus Christ. And at that point, she wasn't creeped out or weirded out or think I was crazy, because for one, she's somebody, again, who's seen entities, but for two, she was just used to hearing about this. So if she did think it was nonsense, it was a bit saturated to the point where she accepted it. So yeah, I told her, and I think it was prompted by her asking me, do I believe in Jesus Christ? Am I a Christian? Or whatever. And I told her I grew up Baptist, and for majority of my life, I basically did believe in Jesus Christ. Now, can I say whether or not he exists? I cannot say. I am spiritually agnostic, and I'm still open to my studies right now. But at any rate, just like in my first video where I said that around the age of 6, I was still very sensitive to having natural DMT trips and other out-of-body astral projection, lucid dream, etc. experiences. So I told her one night I was watching television, watching Adult Swim. I forgot what I was watching on there. I was watching Adult Swim. Everybody in my house was asleep. My mother, my other siblings, everybody was asleep. I remember being in the living room, and I'm watching TV. I got the remote with me. I'm having a good time. And suddenly, I feel a bit tired. And it was a bit late, so nothing unusual there. Maybe I need to turn over and go to sleep. So that's what I did. Left the TV on, turned over, and went to sleep. Maybe to me, in what felt like maybe 45 seconds after that, and this is scary, especially to experience as a child, I suddenly zwoosh with what felt like a zwoosh. I feel right back awake, except now I'm standing up in the living room. I'm standing up in the middle of the floor. And what's going on is I'm clearly losing my consciousness. Somehow, some way, maybe sleepwalking or whatever the case may be, some other form of phenomena. Obviously, based on how the story goes, I consider it a paranormal experience. But I went from laying on the couch with my eyes closed to the only thing I can recall is opening my eyes. And I'm in the middle of the living room floor now. And what I feel is I'm fainting. I was being dragged to the ground. Gravity was dragging me down. And it wasn't merciful at all. I tried to fight. I tried to fight it the best way I could. But I was clearly falling. And the most noticeable thing, the first words that I spoke, and I didn't even speak them, but the first words that I thought, because what was going on with this fainting, I fought it as if I was fighting for my life. Like I thought I was dying, obviously, and I didn't want to die yet. I had an entire life to live, an entire life ahead of me, and I didn't really experience anything yet. I'm only 6 years old. I didn't want to die yet, so I fought it. And that's extremely important when I'm not trying to stall the story, but when I say I fought it, like I can't really put into words how evasive I was, how resilient I was. It took a lot to get me to succumb to what was happening. And maybe after what felt like an eternity of trying to stay on my feet and keep my balance and stay woke, because I feel like my eyes were closing and my energy was just being evaporated. What I told myself was, damn, well, I might as well die. So it was so strong that I submitted to it. And it's humbling because that was the most realistic time I was able to experience that if death wants me, death can take me at any minute. That's what I learned. Because I was completely healthy. Death could take me at any minute. That was definitely death to me. And I had an experience last year while I was rushed to the ER and experienced something similar. The only thing that was different was last year I was able to stay awake. The symptoms, the being dragged to the ground. Essentially, I had a stroke last year. It was very similar to this experience, but also for obvious reasons, it was very different. And I'm trying not to sound redundant using the same vocabulary. But yeah, I fall to the ground and I hear a thud when I fall, and it was a hard fall. But I noticed when I fell on the ground hard, oddly enough, I didn't really feel anything. Like, yes, I just fainted and I think my head hit the ground first. Yet I didn't feel it. And what happened was the screen goes black. Now, when I come to, I'm on a completely different barrel of existence, clearly. Or if you want to call it in another dimension, on another level of experience. Or, if I have to be honest with you, you can call it what I thought it was at the time, which was hell. You can call it hell. The theme, when I came to, I was in an all red place. That felt enclosed, like it was some kind of red cave or tavern or something like that. And it didn't really feel like I was outside. It felt like I was in an enclosed space. It felt like perhaps I was in the center of, or near the center of the earth, except it wasn't physically burning or hot. And the vibration that I felt wasn't necessarily fear or torture or violence or anything scary for the most part, but there was suspense. And it felt like within this suspense, something bad could happen at any time. But for the most part, the experience was calm. So I come to, and I'm in this red place, and I'm looking around very curiously, and I'm thinking to myself, am I dead? And long behold, what do I see? I see a man sitting at a desk, and everything was rendered with poor quality for the most part. It was not like the DMT trips that I experienced that I was used to feeling more real than reality. This actually quite visibly was clearly less real than 3D reality. But at the same time, something just felt official about it, as if it was happening for a reason. So I approached the man sitting at the desk because I'm like, maybe he has answers. But at the same time, I did it with a level of skepticism because obviously I was in a strange place, meeting a strange entity. I was afraid. But the closer I got to that entity, I realized two things. One, it looked like the European depiction of Jesus Christ. I mean, spot on really, except they were wearing glasses. And they were going through papers. That's number two. Two, it's as if, and I equivalate this with this a lot, it gave off kind of a theme of when Santa Claus has a naughty and nice list and he's going through it, figuring out who he wants to reward, who he wants to give toys to, and who gets the coal. It felt almost as innocent as that, but at the same time, I knew better because at the time I was already going to church. So I approached the desk, and this depiction of Jesus Christ didn't look at me a single time, but somehow the energy was so strong that I knew that he knew that I was there. And before I could even think of what to say, he asked me in a vibration, not an audible voice, in a vibration. I cannot tell you how he sounded. But he asked me, really simple, have you been good or bad? The equivalent of naughty or nice. Have you been good or bad? And this is what I tell people when I tell this story. He knew the real answer. There was no way I was going to lie to this person, especially if it was really Jesus Christ. There was no way I was going to get away with lying to this person. So what I thought about was me being a little troublesome in school, me fighting my siblings all the time, ignoring my mom when she said clean up, etc., etc. And what happened was I became very compassionate, and I pleaded with Jesus Christ. And I said, I actually remember vividly being on my knees, praying, saying, please forgive me. I've been bad. Please forgive me. I won't be bad anymore. Please send me back. I don't want to die yet. I promise you I'll make it up to you. I'll be good for the rest of my life. And for some odd reason, I felt like that answer did not satisfy this entity. But somehow they had to understand exactly what was going on or exactly how I felt. So they continued fidgeting with papers. But as soon as I pleaded like that, I noticed the experience started breaking down, and there was some shift that was taking me somewhere else at this point. So when I get to this part of the story, my ex was almost begging to intervene because it had reminded her of her situation that she claimed she died and came back. And just like me, when she explains it, I say, go ahead, I'll finish the rest. And when she explains it, she starts off with, okay, so I was about 6 years old. And I'm like, oh, okay, I was also 6 when this happened. That's kind of funny. Trust me, we used to count how many synchronicities, so it wasn't like a big deal. It's like, okay, there's just another one. But things get trippier the longer the story goes. So She said that she was taking a bath and her mother had left a radio. You know, one of the radios. Radios used to be a thing. I know times have changed, but she left the radio on the bathroom counter, you know, on the sink. And just like my experience, this was at night, and as you probably can imagine, somehow that radio fell into the tub where my ex was, and she was electrocuted and then rushed to the hospital. Now, you let her tell it, all she remembers is being in the tub and then being in the hospital. And she didn't really experience that much pain. But when she woke up at the hospital, her family was around her to comfort her. And at the time, she was confused as to what was going on. But what she did do was cite this as the turning point in her life as to when she started seeing entities. And she still to this day sees entities. She said she used to see them throughout the day when we were in school, because we went to school with each other from like 2014 or 13, I believe, 2014-ish to 2017 when we both graduated. And earlier than that, she was seeing entities, having ghost experiences, having frequent nightmares, having vivid dreams and experiences, hearing voices in her head, whatever the case may be. She was able to function without submitting to anything or being deemed crazy. But she knew that there was an overlap on her ordinary 3D reality. And this was the point in which she feels was responsible for that, because ever since she was electrocuted, her vibration changed. And I believe, rather profoundly done or just incidentally, what happened was her Kundalini Shakti was awakened since then. So it's safe to say that she died that night and reconnected with something else. So at this point in the story, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. The possibility of her having a Kundalini awakening from this experience. But also I'm getting ready to tell the rest of my experience, and that's when I recognize the profound synchronizations. So I started off by saying, you know what? That's a bit strange, because this is the rest of how my story goes. When I left that place that I thought was hell, when it faded out, the very first thing I experienced was, and no matter how strange it sounds, I never fabricate these stories. So I have to tell the truth. I have to tell the God honest truth. What I experienced was being a girl in a hospital bed. And it felt like I had just arrived back from being up, even though I was convinced what I had just experienced was on a lower level. Now, obviously at the time I couldn't make this out, but as I'm explaining it to her and I'm thinking of the story, things just get more and more trippy. So I'm experiencing as this girl on a hospital bed. I don't remember having a single thought. What I do remember is feeling like I was that girl. This is me. This is who I've been. This is who I am. But somehow, some way, suddenly I was able to remember that I lived a completely different life as a boy named Sean, who was also 6 years old. And for me, the hospital room was empty up until I really pondered being completely different. And instead of being greeted by family members and recognizing family, what I was greeted by were angels. And they were more of the biblical type angels. They were really hard to describe. And though the vibration felt familiar, I was also terrified by it. I didn't know what or who I was experiencing. They were different from those angels in the first video that I said delivered me to earth and even experienced on Earth with me. One I hypothesized of actually being this X that's in question. So let's say we perhaps had cosmic powers or cosmic intelligence. I believe at this particular point in time, that shit was stripped away from us. You get what I'm saying? Like, we were completely ignorant. We had egos, and somehow we were still divinely protected. And that's how I still feel even today. So I see what I thought was one angel, but it also felt like a ton or an infinite amount at the same time. And I think that was just how powerful the vibration was. But at the same time, they felt close to me. They felt like a family member, but they also felt like, not that they were trying to harm me, but they were trying to save me. And even if they had to go to uncomfortable lengths to do so, then they would do so. So it's as if you have a virus on your computer and you don't know how to work it, and some older person, they feel like, hey, okay, let me check it out and I'll try to fix it for you. And it seemed like they tamper or fidget with it and try to get rid of the virus, and they're kind of scolding you about all the junk you got on there. This is how that experience felt. It felt like there was lots of, oh, you did this, oh, you shouldn't have did that, oh, you could have done this better, oh, okay, I have to do this and I have to unhook that. That's how it felt. And it wasn't helped by the fact that I was terrified, and they knew that. So it seemed like they were just trying to do their job and go about their business. And I remember feeling them sigh like, okay, finally it's done. They didn't say that, nor did I feel the vibration of it strongly, but subtly I knew they were finished at a particular point, because that's just how things seem to be. And the setting changes again, and it doesn't change like it did the first time, where the very fabric of space-time was being faded away or I fainted or anything. This was a literal cosmic drop. It felt like me as whatever I am, not necessarily a human, not necessarily a boy or even a girl at that particular time, whatever I am in true nature, that level of experience fell or dropped to me. I genuinely remember physically dropping down. And it's very hard to explain, but it's like an elevator going from level 2 to level 1, except it's going very fast and it's a bit strong. And when I come to, guess what? I'm waking up as Sean again, the 6-year-old boy. And I'm on the living room floor, not the couch, which compels me to believe that I really fainted. And that was not fabricated by my imagination or anything else or any other form of hallucination. It had to be real, because I woke up on the floor even though I thought I went to sleep on the couch. So I genuinely feel like I really fainted. And I woke up on that floor and I noticed some things. One, it was morning time. Two, everybody in the household was up. So just that fast, time has shifted from nighttime to daytime. And I promise you, there, everything felt within 10 minutes, maybe less, maybe even 5 minutes. 5 minutes might be more accurate. Everything was going on at an exponentially faster rate than what we're used to on Earth. But it wasn't like a DMT trip where it felt like time wasn't applicable at all. There was definitely order and structure to these experiences. But when I woke up, what I wanted to do was tell somebody what I had just experienced. And I told my great grandmother, who was like very, rest her soul, very religious, very devoted to Christianity. And the next time she visited, I had to wait. It was probably a few days to a week. And I held this in. I said, Great Granny, I met Jesus Christ. And I told him I was bad, and he gave me a second chance. And I don't know what she told me, but with her being as devoted as she was, of course she believed it. And she said something to kind of, help me out or to ease the concern or suspicion or whatever. She said something like along the lines of, he's always with you. You have nothing to worry about. But on the flip side of things, that day when I woke up, I wanted to tell my brothers, hey, y'all not gonna believe this. I fainted and I met Jesus Christ. And then I was born as a girl in a hospital, and then I came back here and it was morning time instead of night. But the more you think to say things like that, and no matter how much you try to make it make sense, it just doesn't make sense. So when I get to this part of the story with these correlations, my ex, who I was with at the time, obviously, she must have reflected on everything else we talked about. And she just kind of like casually submitted to the idea of it being true. And she was like, well, maybe you visited me. Maybe you're a part of me. Maybe you my twin flame, because I talked a lot of the idea of us being twin flames because I did my research on that. And to this day, that's plausible. But I also feel like we're not the only two. And that's the only reason why I ditched the twin flame concept. It seems like there's at least 4 of us. And if you listen to my first video, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I also feel like we're the most distant, and it's not intentional. It's because compared to the other two, we relate the most. We're too close. And disagreement could be our worst enemy. Not just on a cosmic level, but on a physical level. And I think that's what helped me go through health issues and things of that nature when we actually separated. No, I was not depressed. No, I was not heartbroken. Thank God, because that sucks, right? But karmically, something just didn't feel aligned the way it was supposed to be aligned. And I do regret that relationship for that reason. But again, the moral of the story is, I tell her, I must have met you before we physically met in high school. I met the child you. And that's why perhaps I related to this person so much, even in high school, especially when we were together. And as weird as it sounds, and I used to call it weird to her then, every time I brought it up, I would say, you know what? You feel more like a sibling to me than anything. Even in disagreement, an inevitable nuisance that I was forced to deal with. Because even if I didn't want to physically, I have to cosmically. And now that I'm back awakened, because I went through a spell of dullness on my own, now that I'm back awakened, she's one of those people, and it's not out of love or necessarily remembering her and the experiences we had. It's more so on a divine level, or something is just forcing her connectivity to me, because not only is she always in my head, yeah, she has her own physical vessel, just like the other two that I talked about. She was just as curious as all of this shit as I was. But now that we've been separated, what I feel like I'm in contact with is a potential higher self of all of them, i.e. those ones that I felt delivered me to Earth, who share the exact same or very, very closely related frequency of these people on Earth. And I mean, it's in their look, it's in the way that they act. Obviously, there's a few different factors. They're not as confident. They have lots of doubt on Earth, and doubt can lead to disagreements. So the voices that I hear in my head, I'm able to picture them as if they're with me, and I'm not doing it deliberately. I'm not doing it deliberately. If I'm having a bad day and I'm lashing out on somebody, I will hear one of the three go, "We're not doing this today. Take it easy. Calm down." Other times, I do something that kind of deserves praise. Like on my other channel, I would win a rap battle or just have a great live panel discussion and kind of providing some insight that people can benefit from. And as soon as I leave that StreamYard, I'm rushed with the picture of another one. And when I say the picture, I mean the full thing is there, the movement. It's like I have a projection screen of them that turns on automatically just to contact me at specific times. And I would feel their love and them, how proud they are of me in that moment. And it seems like they give me a virtual or a cosmic hug. And it lightens my mood. It inspires my day, actually. It's very, very profound. So essentially, that's the story. And she believed it fully, which is even more interesting to me. Because it's like, what did you experience to be able to just casually say, hey, that coincidence might be true? But again, this is person who we would be talking just like this in the house, and she would jump and she would point to the corner of the room and say, hey, I see a little girl. I see a ghost. I see an entity. She used to say she has 2 other kids. I have one with her, but she has 2 other ones. I think she has even another one right now, a girl, if I'm not mistaken. Which is kind of a synchronicity to my point, because the most rhetorical entity she's seen, and obviously I'm not the father, she moved on in a relationship. I kind of moved on my own terms. But she had a girl, and the most common entity she would see is a girl for some odd reason. It was never really a masculine presence. She would say, do you see that girl? No, I don't see it. I wish I did. I would tell her that just like that. And she would even go as far as to say, the girl plays with my kids. They play in the counters, on the counters or in the cabinets together. Very, very profound. And I believe it because children seem to be a bit more connected to that other side because they have that imagination intact. They have a lot more color and vibrancy. Things aren't really polluting their minds here, and the fluoride isn't at an all-time high intake. So I definitely believe it. But I also believe this. Whether we're a star family, a vibrational family, twin flames, soulmates, or they're my angels, I definitely feel connected to them strongly, because they take up a lot of my day. And it's not like I'm deliberately imagining them and smiling. Hell, honestly, I get tired of seeing them a lot. It's like you see your sibling too much and it's like, oh, I kind of wanted to do my own thing today. It's never out of hate or anything like that. But what it makes you ponder is you want to experience with them after that. And you want it on the physical level, but you also want things to be right. Me, when it comes to one of them, I was completely bashful in school and never really approached them. And I'm going to talk about them because our synchronizations from school are very, very strong. And basically, they're the one that seems to have the most access to me. They seem like they talk to me until I go to sleep. They visit me in dreams. I see them all of the time now, which is out of nowhere, random. And when we were in school, there were points where they clearly tried to interact with me, and I was just too bashful, and I would say, hey, this girl is out of my league. I'm not even going to set myself up for failure. She would never talk to me. You know what I'm saying? She actually didn't think I was too bright at the time. And then she saw one of my performances. It was like dumbfounded by it. And from that, she always encouraged me to chase my dreams of displaying whatever talent I had. And now she's in my head making me do the exact same thing, except it feels a lot more direct, even though she's a voice, a whisper, a projection in my head. And what I want, honestly, more so than anything, is to connect with her on a physical level. But I believe she has the doubts of she offended me by insulting my intelligence, which is my biggest pet peeve as an ego. I hate when people think I'm stupid. I hate when people try to trick me. I hate when people downplay me and they doubt me. I hate all of those things. And it seems like their spirit knows this. Perhaps their ego doesn't. And there's things that their ego has to understand. So I want to connect with all of them, but it has to be right. I feel like I'm just too vulnerable of a personality, of an ego. I'm ignorant in certain fields. I crash out a lot. I snap a lot. And the main thing is I don't have patience. I don't have patience. And my ex, the one I had a child with, she doesn't have patience. So that's something we both share. In fact, she was a lot more fiery than me. I was able to contain myself. Even when something bothered me, I can talk about it calmly. She would completely flip out. And it just reminded me of me. It reminded me of that portion of me that I was holding in. Like it was forcing itself out through her, so to speak. So that was her doubt. I believe her egotistical doubt was not feeling validated or good enough in somebody else's eyes. Similar to mine, but it's more so on the lines of dealing with trauma, having abandonment issues, and anything that would kind of question that unity or that union, it would trigger her. And then the other one, simply, they get discouraged easily. And I don't even know how I know this. Like, we've had the least, with this other one, right? We've had the most in my life, the most spiritual interactions, and also the least physical interactions. They felt closer to me. My very first time seeing them, I knew them already. I knew that I knew them already. And they were the only ones like that I just knew that I met somewhere else. The other two, I wasn't able to say that. So this one, it seems like whenever I'm down or low, my spirit is low, I'm discouraged, I'm unmotivated, that's when they feel the worst. And it seems like their egotistical doubt mimics the same thing. When the going gets too tough and they have to vibrate at a strong energy too long, eventually they collapse. But they don't want to collapse alone. They want somebody there to uplift them. And more so than anything, they hate. All three of them. They hate whenever I'm feeling discouraged. I promise you. One of these next videos, I'm going to talk about the type of conversations that we have inside of my head, whether it's telepathic communication with their ego, which I doubt, or their soul. And I only doubt it because of the ego is ignorant. And they're connecting to my ego, which is ignorant. And I believe that is leaving us stagnant. We have to reconnect on a higher level, come to specific terms of agreement, and somehow substitute that information onto this level so we can connect the proper way. So that was that story, and that was a bit of insight as to why I wouldn't call this a twin flame situation. There's definitely others involved. But what do you think this is? Hit that like button for me, comment, subscribe, share the stream. I definitely will be making lots more of these videos. I have tons of experiences that I want you guys to hear. So stay tuned and have a nice day or night, whatever the case may be. Namaste.